All right, good afternoon, everybody. I have just hit the record button and we are recording our March VRM Insider. We are very excited to have our friends from Breezeway here with us. So we are going to get started here in just 1 second. I'm going to allow a few minutes for our participants to trickle in. I know it's just after lunch for a lot of people. We thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Just a little bit of housekeeping. If you have questions throughout today's webinar, there is a Q&A button down at the bottom of your screen. If you hover down at the bottom of your screen, you'll see it'll say Q&A with 2 little speech bubbles. That's the place to leave your questions. And if it's an appropriate place to stop, we'll stop and ask those during the webinar. If not, don't worry, we'll save those questions to the very end. We have some time dedicated just for questions and answers. This is our 3rd webinar of the year. And as promised at the very beginning of the year, we're going to try to keep things nice and short and sweet. It's one of our goals this year to give you back some time in your day. So out of your best interest, we're not going to keep you here our normal hour like we've always done traditionally. So probably be right around the 40-minute mark so you can plan on hanging out with us and then getting a little bit of your time back today. And today we have from Breezeway, which if you guys aren't familiar with Breezeway and their suite of products, just hold on, you're going to get to know them here in just a few minutes. And we have had a relationship, and actually we were just talking about this, since May 2017, VRM and Breezeway have been doing business together. So we're looking at some longevity in our relationship, some solidarity there. We're very excited to introduce you guys once again to Breezeway. It's been about a year since we've had them on the webinar. And today we have Koryn Okey with us. Koryn Okey. I knew I would say it wrong, even though I asked her. It's Koryn Okey. And she is the VP of Client Experience. So no better person to talk to our clients than the person at Breezeway who's responsible for the client experience. So Koryn, we are very, very lucky to have the best clients in the whole wide world. And we're so happy just to turn this time over to you and allow you to walk them through not just what Breezeway is, but automating some of their hospitality experiences and how you can help them with that. So Koryn, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for giving us the opportunity to get in front of your clients and share not only about what Breezeway does, but about property care and the importance of prioritizing operations in general. So thank you. So thanks, Tracy. I really appreciate that. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen. And then as Tracy said, we're going to try to stick to the 40-minute mark. I'm actually going to set a timer on my phone to keep me honest as well. And let's be realistic that we have a lot of information to cover here, and so I'm sure that we that we'll have a great conversation and go over and talk a little bit more about this. And as Tracy also mentioned, love for this to be interactive. So if as we're going through, put those questions in the Q&A box, and we'll either answer them in real time or as we're going through a bit further. So yes, my name is Koryn Okey. I have been with Breezeway since 2017. In fact, right around when we started that integration with the VRM team. And we are super excited to partner with them and to provide additional operational functionality to their clients. I'll give you a little bit of information about me. I have been in the vacation rental industry since 2008. For some of you may remember a small little company called FlipKey, which ultimately went on to be TripAdvisor and to power the vacation rental experience there. I spent 7 years with that company prior to joining the team here at Breezeway. And our founder, Jeremy Gall, was also one of the founders of that company as well. I am obsessed with this industry. I love vacation rentals. I love all of the people who tirelessly make them function and operate on a daily basis throughout their markets. And I'm really excited to be able to share with you today a little bit more about our tool because I really believe that it can help you continue to improve your operational efficiency. So for anybody who doesn't know about Breezeway, we are a software solution that helps with everything operations focused. So anything from, and we're going to get into all of the details about what that means in a few minutes, but automating your operations for delivering really great hospitality experiences. So how do you schedule your housekeepers, your inspectors, your maintenance? How do issues that they find out in the field get back so that they can be triaged and completed? How do we make sure that your brand standards are being adhered to and being delivered on by your team in the field? We also talk a lot, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later on really helping to drive the value of your business to your homeowners. I think there's a little bit of a disconnect in some instances on how people really communicate what they're doing and really showcase the value of their business. We also have a messaging program, a messaging product that will allow you to actually have automated text conversations with your guests, as well as a safety and certification program that we refer to as STRSI, that my colleague Justin Ford, who many in the industry know as a safety guru. So we're going to talk a little bit about all of those things. I just want to kind of give you a little bit of an understanding of what this time looks like. So I have used our time for our introduction. Folks that weren't able to join or weren't aware of this, we actually just completed a 2-day conference, our property operations summit called Elevate. So I wanted to share a couple of takeaways with you guys. I wanted to talk to you about why we believe at Breezeway property care is so important, share with you how we help do that, and then again, walk through what those, any questions that you guys may have. You guys, Elevate was amazing. If you missed it, we will certainly be sharing some of the recordings from that session, but I was blown away. I have been to many conferences in my 12 plus years in this industry, and the level of expertise and excitement about property care was so evident in these sessions. So the sessions were Tuesday and Wednesday, and we had a ton of really great topics that we covered. You can see those sessions here on your screen. But I wanted to call out just a couple of takeaways that I personally had from each of these sessions, because I think it's really interesting to sort of think about as you're thinking about your own business. So one of the very first sessions we did had Simon Lehman and Marilee Carr from Under the Doormat and Travis Reiner from Marriott Homes and Villas. And it was all about elevating the quality in the vacation rental supply. And Travis said something, and we have a quote, but it's not this one from him. But he said, it's about creating the illusion that that guest who comes into your property is the first person who has stayed there. And let that sink in. The people that are doing that and ensuring that happens are your property care teams. So I think that's super, super relevant for all of the things that we're going to talk about. In another session, Amber Carpenter, who's been in the industry for some time, said that we're so focused on that check-in experience. And while that's certainly super important, we tend to leave things and sort of leave things for checkout to chance. And there was a lot of aha moments for property managers to think about, well, what are we doing on the checkout and how are we ensuring, right, the psychology of the guest and how their last memory is about that checkout experience. We talked to managers. We had managers speaking about how they extended their check-in and check-out times with COVID to allow for more time to clean and really deliver on those brand standards. A lot of talk about standardizing linens and bedding within your properties. We talked a lot about guest communication, and that's something that we're going to talk about later in this deck, because we have two types of communication. We have the way that we communicate to our guests and the way that we communicate to our homeowners. And there was a lot of discussion around how we communicate to both parties. So we had that conversation as well. As some really great insight into, what you promise to your homeowners and how you deliver on that, and how you sort of form your team to drive efficiency and your team performance. So this event was, I would say, what I think wildly successful. I'm a little biased because it was our event. But I'll tell you what, over 700 people registered for this conference. To me, that indicates just how important everyone feels that property care and property operations are to their business in this moment. I think it's always been really important, but now more than ever, more and more important. Here's some of those quotes. I'm not going to read them to you. You guys can check them out here on the screen. But again, really great content, a lot of conversation. And it just, again, as I said, reiterates how important that is to what you all are doing every day. We also just recently closed our property operations survey. And so there were a lot of questions or a lot of great statistics that came from that. I don't want to call all of these out here, but I think they're certainly worth taking a look at and thinking about how would you answer this question? You know, how are you planning to differentiate your business by optimizing your tech stack? Or are you, you know, how many tools do you use? We did a live poll, and I didn't get to get the number on that yesterday for attendees, but a lot of people are using multiple softwares to run their business, whether it's accounting or it's a CRM, or you're doing everything in VRM, or using a system like a Key Data that's going to help with you know, information about what's going on in your market. Really great, you know, tools that are out there to help supplement what you're doing. I think, you know, one of these statistics, the 94% of respondents to the survey plan on addressing property and guest safety. There was a whole session yesterday on the importance of that, and Proper Insurance was on, and they talked a lot about a lot of the types of I'm gonna blank on the word, claims. Thank you, goodness, I'm glad I thought of it. The claims that they process, and a lot of them are about like trip hazards and things like that. I think that we're gonna see, you know, we saw cleanliness be a major factor this year for a lot of property management companies. I think we're gonna see guest safety and property safety continue to be at the forefront of a lot of people's minds this year.
Koryn, I am blown away by that 94% number of people who plan to address property and guest safety in 2021, which, you know, that means it's part of their plan for 2021, part of their business plan, and probably part of their marketing plan as well, which is huge. I mean, almost everyone.
It's wild. And you know, it's funny. So Justin heads up our safety program, of course, but I have had the opportunity, and I'm in a bunch of, you know, we all know, right? There's so many Facebook groups for property managers and for this industry now, and it's a great way to share information. And I was watching a conversation the other day, and it was a bunch of people who had taken the short-term rental safety inspector course and then been able to go back to their homeowners and say, hey, this isn't safe. And I bet you, if you guys, you know, if we were to do that, the number of little things that you don't even think about, which you end up ultimately being liable for, right? If something were to happen, it is tremendous. And everyone that has taken it has just talked about the fact that it sort of opened my eyes. And as I was able to go through with these homeowners and say, this is really important, because it wasn't, we want you to change this because this dresser doesn't meet the aesthetic of the home. It was, this dresser isn't safe, or this rug isn't, you know, whatever it is. Justin would have way better examples than a dresser and a rug, but yeah, it's a wild number. And I think it's one that we're going to continue to see at the forefront, like I said, because it's just so important. And I think, you know, we're also really going to see a lot of, you know, those cleaning standards that people put into place continue to be implemented and built on, even as, you know, I want to get political with how people feel about vaccines, but even as it becomes safer and people feel more comfortable traveling, you know, that's always going to be, I think, forevermore on a lot of our minds moving forward. So we're going to see a lot of, you know, continued improvements to the cleaning standards. I also, one more thing I think is just really interesting. 66% of managers planning to strengthen guest communications and services. Big theme that came out in the session yesterday, in the sessions yesterday, as well as obviously in this property operations survey, but over communicating, or is there still the concept of over communicating with your guests, and people want to know exactly what's going to be done and what to expect. And so I think we're going to see a big improvement to how we're doing that, not only in like the information that's communicated, but the methods in which we're communicating with folks. All right. So obviously, I'm not telling you guys anything you don't know. Delivering this quality experience is tough, and it's not cheap. There's some stats on here that I won't talk too much of, but we recognize how difficult it is to execute. This is the one part of your business, whether it's communicating with guests or whether it's servicing these properties, that cannot be automated, right? You cannot say property A needs to be clean, poof, property A is clean, right? A person has to do this. And every time a person has to be involved, it runs the risk of something not going the way that you'd like for it to, no matter how much training and how well intended someone is. And so, we recognize that not only is it expensive, there's a lot of training that goes into it. There's a lot of time and energy and blood, sweat, and tears that are going into these activities. There's also constant pull and reprioritization at any given point throughout your day. If you think about a busy turn day and what you start off planning to accomplish that day and what you end up accomplishing that day, there's probably a very big difference between what that looks like. And I think that one of the reasons that happens is because, again, as I mentioned a few seconds ago, the reprioritization of importance. The guest that screams the loudest is going to get their dishwasher fixed. But one of the reasons that, a much larger, more intensive type of issue is so challenging, right, is that there are also so many touch points. I wrote down here as I was thinking, prepping for this, you have one issue, right? Let's say that your housekeeper is out in the field and they report that the sleeper sofa is broken. What actually has to happen to fix that sleeper sofa, right? You have to have someone report it. You have to have someone manage it and say, okay, we need to call the owner and get their approval. Then we have to figure out what's going to be replaced with. Then it has to be ordered. And if anybody has ordered furniture this year, we know, it took me 10 weeks to get a new couch. So we've got a delay in that. Then once it's there, who's going to meet the delivery company to install it? What are we going to do? Who's going to update the marketing photos? What do we do with the guests that were supposed to be in there? How do we bill the homeowner? How do we communicate that it's done? You name it, there is a step that has to be taken. And so that becomes even more challenging if we don't have the right solutions in place to do it, which is why this leads me to why we think that operations is so critical for your business right now. The guest expectations have not been going down. They have, if anything, only been increasing. COVID has increased the cleanliness expectations. COVID, from everything that I heard, also made some guests not as pleasant as they have been in years past for many companies. Yesterday, we talked about Eddie Gray from Newman Daily down in the Destin or Florida Panhandle, talked about how they were getting calls from guests for a Teflon pan that had a scratch in it, or a fork that had a water spot on it, and immediately jumping to the conclusion that that house wasn't clean or wasn't up to the standards. So those guest expectations aren't going anywhere. They're only going to continue to heighten. We also talked a lot, and I already mentioned this once about the purposeful guest communication and how are you reporting on the work that you're doing? How are you communicating that to your future guests, to your homeowners? Are you using the work and the all of the things that you're doing to attract new guests, or new homeowners, right? Are you taking, hey, this is how we take care of this company's or this homeowner's home. This is what we can do for you, and using these services that you offer to differentiate your business amongst your competitors. And then the last one is this idea of utilizing operational technology. It's here, right? It's available, whether it's our system or another. There is a way to get a competitive advantage in a crowded market. And so we're going to talk to you, obviously, I'm going to talk to you about our product. But, you know, I want you to think about how you're doing some of these things. What are the guest experiences that you have had that, do they meet that expectation of the higher guest experience, right? Are your homeowners questioning more about who's coming in or how long they're there or the wear and tear on their homes? I think there's a lot to be said there. This is just a little bit more kind of an overview slide about Breezeway. Again, you know, we're helping to automate your property data and real-time feedback from the field, and helping to really coordinate and make sure that your work is done correctly. As I said on I think the first slide when I talked a little bit more about us. And so I want to kind of talk about what does that mean, right? That can be some marketing jargon. It can, you know, it is a really big idea, but how are we actually doing it? And so these icons here represent some of the functionality, and we're going to dig into a handful of these as we go through. But you know, the first one is the PMS integration. So obviously we're integrated with VRM. We'll talk a little bit more about the VRM integration at the end. But we're not only integrated with property management systems, right? We also integrate with lock companies, and we've got some really great IoT devices that are going to be coming into our integrations portfolio here soon as well. We are helping with advanced staff planning. So it's one thing to say, all right, I have a departure and I need a cleaner. But how are you balancing the workload for those cleaners or for those inspectors? How are you making sure that everything is getting done on the day in which it needs to be done? Well, some of our advanced staff planning tools are going to help you do that, making sure that a particular individual is not overloaded and can actually execute on the work that you've assigned to them. We're giving you additional visibility through some of our additional visibility for sure. I don't even know if that's the next text here, or the next little icon here, but we're automating some of that scheduling. So like I said, this is a part of the business that can't be automated as it pertains to doing the work, but the scheduling of the work and the coordinating of the work, we're able to help with through automation. So in our system, and we're going to talk about this, right? You have the ability to say on an arrival, do this, on a departure, do this. And then all that stuff is being automated. It's being communicated to those assignees. You have visibility into when they do it, how long it took, what they did. They can report issues to you, all kinds of good stuff. Another one that's on here that I think is super important is the, what does it say on here? Real-time work coordination. I've got the Q&A up over my slide, so I had to look at the printed piece here. But this is a really big one, specifically as it pertains to maintenance. So I'd love for everybody to sort of think about how many times has a guest called with an issue and you needed to send someone, but you didn't necessarily know who was in the area or closest, or maybe who had additional time today to do that work. So one of the things that we offer within our system is the ability for you to know where your staff is at any point during the day. It's utilizing GPS functionality in our mobile app, so that if that guest calls and says X is broken, you can look and say, you know what, Koryn is right down the street, and we're going to go ahead and dispatch her over to that property to take care of that, because she can do that right away, and she can go back to what she was doing. I talked a little bit about this. We have a custom mobile app that allows your team to really not only see the work that is expected of them, but to go through a custom tailored checklist to the properties they're doing work at. The SMS messaging tool, which we have a whole slide on here later. Asset management, so really digging into what exists at that home. What's the make, model, serial number? How many times have you serviced it? Helping you make some better decisions on, do we just keep fixing this, or do we make the investment on replacing it? And helping you also make the argument to the homeowner, or recommendation, maybe argument isn't the right word, that says, listen, we fixed this 5 times and we didn't even tell you about it. It keeps breaking. It's impacting our guest experience. We need to replace it. And I think that's super important. Nobody wants to be caught just continually fixing someone and having an owner say, but why didn't we just replace it? Why have I spent all of this money fixing it? And then that last piece is the detailed owner reporting, which really goes to one of the comments that I made earlier about driving the value of your company to those homeowners. So I've got 15 minutes. We are going to finish that early, mostly because I talk fast. So hopefully y'all are not having trouble keeping up here. But we're going to talk about Breezeway and how we help, getting into a little bit more detail than we looked at on that previous slide. So assigning and coordinating work. And I think this part is important, with the right people at the right time. So not only just saying, Tracy, you need to go do these 7 cleans today, but helping Tracy understand, how do you prioritize your day? If you've got 3 checkouts and 2 check-ins, how are you figuring that out? Where are you putting the back-to-backs? What do you need to do? Where do you need to be? Providing you guys as the property managers or the supervisors who might be back in the office or might be out in the field doing work, with real information about what is actually happening. So I alluded to this a little bit earlier, but when we schedule, right, you have the ability to set up your default people at your default properties. You have your processes of what happens on an arrival or a departure or a same day turnover, and what needs to be done on each of those jobs. Maybe it's 5 or 6 different things that need to happen on a checkout day. Our system will allow you to schedule all of those automatically utilizing our advanced scheduling rules. And then when the person who finishes the first job is done, that next person is going to get a notification. So that means that if someone in your office is manning a phone on a busy turnover day for a housekeeper to say, this is done, you don't have to do that anymore. Because when that housekeeper says this is done in Breezeway, it's going to automatically tell the next person that they can go and do that. And so we're trying to say, where can we provide automation to help your team be able to take other actions and do other work? As I said, it gives you that visibility into how long it's been done, when it's being done, as well as giving your team a way that instead of calling you to say, Jeremy, this is broken, they can actually just report the issue, take a picture, tell you where it's happening, and that automatically goes to your maintenance supervisor or whomever's handling that for your business, your dispatch, so that they can review and triage that work. Yesterday, in one of the sessions at Elevate, Ben Edwards talked about a maintenance tech that people were that one of the businesses that he was working with was planning to let go. And it came out in the conversation with this that this person was just getting Post-it notes handed to him. Here's this thing that needs done. Here's this thing that needs done. And that person was running from place to place and wasn't able to see at a whole all of the work that needs done. Now, I've been in the industry long enough to not be naive enough to know that things happen that you cannot anticipate. But if you know where people are going, you can make those trade-offs and that reprioritization that we talked about a few minutes ago. Also, one thing that I really love about what the Breezeway product is helping people do is get a better hold on the recurring tasks, that preventative maintenance that you need to be doing. If it's a semi-annual deep clean, a pre-season inspection, Justin would be happy the frequency with which you change your smoke detectors or your fire extinguishers, all of these things that you're doing that somebody is probably managing with a piece of paper or an Excel document. We can have all of that automatically being scheduled as you need it to. We're also making sure that the right work is being done at the right properties. Listen, there's a lot of conversation about, here's my cleaning checklist, and this is what we do for cleans. And I think that there is, as we see this expectation of cleaning standards and guest expectations continuing to increase, a need to recognize that homes are different and that one size fits all approach just doesn't really work, right? What you do in a house versus a condo is different. It's not always going to be the same. What you do in John's house versus Sarah's house is going to be different. So this is one of my favorite parts of Breezeway's system, but it's the ability for you to say, here's what we do. And then this is what we do on a departure time. on a departure clean. And then I'm going to go to this house and I'm going to say, well, this bathroom doesn't have a shower, so I don't need to do the shower work. Or this kitchen doesn't have a dishwasher, so I'm going to take that out. And then on every subsequent visit to that property, I'm only doing what is important at that property. You know, how many of you, if you're using checklists, and I don't have a poll, I have all of these great ideas as we're talking that would be polls, but how many of you have a checklist that you give to your housekeepers and you say you need to return this checklist to me? I don't know, maybe this is a little antiquated. I'm not sure. I think there's still people doing it. So if you're like, you're crazy, I'm sorry. But you say you have to complete the checklist and hand it back to me, right? So that we can process payroll. And they go like this with a piece of paper. Whoosh, did it all. We can't drive accountability for our teams if we are asking them to do things that don't make sense at a property. So that's why I said it's one of my favorite parts of our system, because all of our checklists are customized for the particular property and task that the work is being completed at. And I think that's really helpful to drive accountability and reliability and transparency with your teams. I talked a lot about the GPS. We also have the ability to track the supplies that are being used. How do we have to order X again? Where did they all go? Well, obviously they're going somewhere, but where? And do you have a particular property where the guests are continually taking all of these things and you're replacing items? Do you have a particular person who works for you that always uses significantly more of a supply than others? We want to be able to help you track where those supplies are being used at, so that you can not only understand when you need more, but understand where they're going. And then this last bullet point, which is, I think, a really important one, right, is brand standards and compliance with your brand standards. So a lot of people have binders, or they encourage their team to go look at the website to see how the property should look, or what the bedding should be in a particular room, or how the furniture should be arranged. All of that can be on that checklist that's on their mobile phone, so that they can actually go and be able to see something doesn't look right in this room. Even your most seasoned people, something doesn't look right in this room. Oh, that chair is supposed to be here, and they can make that move, so that those needy guests that are coming in aren't going to walk in and say, this isn't what it was supposed to look like. Being able to provide that to your team while they're in the field, so that should they need it, they have it, is super important, and really can help ensure that your brand goals and your brand standards that you make to your guests and also to your homeowners are actually being executed on. We've also got simplifying, obviously, the operations. I talked a little bit about this on my last slide. So I kind of put two of these slides together, but again, setting those requirements, scheduling the work that needs to be done on the right days, and having that automate so that somebody isn't manually doing that, super important. Two more slides about what we're doing here, which is the messaging. You guys, I can't tell you how much conversation there was about communicating at the Elevate conference this week. Everybody was talking about how they're communicating to owners, over communicating to their homeowners about what they're doing and how they're taking care of, over communicating to incoming guests, but also talking about communicating to your guests who are in-house. So if you don't know about Breezeway's messaging program, I will tell you 4 things about it, which I think are really, really useful, which is that you get a local number. You can have automated messages go out to your guests and owners, different messages, pre-stay, excuse me, post-arrival, pre-departure, and post-departure. So you can communicate with them at all of the key touch points of their stay, so that they know they have a way to communicate with you. And the conversations and the types of questions and responses that people are getting really means it's effective. People feel a really personal experience when they're staying with you. Someone, and I can't remember who it was, so I won't be able to give them credit, said that you could call all day long and half the time you're going to get voicemail. and you could send a text and you're going to get a response, 90% of the time. So it's a really great way, again, to be able to automate that. Then when they write in and they need something, to be able to have a person manning that and respond to them. No problem. That's not working. We'll send somebody out, create that task, send it out. And then, Mr. Guest, would you like for us to let you know when we're going to be handling this? You can send task messages out to let them know that John is on his way. John is going to do this job today. John started it. John's finished it. Again, removing that need for someone to individually call that client and say, hey, the work is done. And I thought one thing actually came out in one of our conversations about guest messaging was I can be texting with 4 or 5 guests at one time. I can only be on the phone with one. And so when you think about, well, I don't have the resources to be manning incoming text messages, you probably have those more aligned than answering the phone, right? You probably have the ability to multitask and talk to more guests at once versus having to do it individually on a phone conversation. And I think this is one of the other things that I was going to say when we talk about this, right, is there's also an away responder. So if that guest writes into you at 10 p.m. and your office is closed and they're saying, hey, the blender's not working, we need a new one, they're going to get an away response that says, hey, our office is closed. We'll get back to you in the morning. Here's our number if this is an urgent issue. Wouldn't it be nice for whoever handles your off-duty calls to not have to get a call about a blender at 10 o'clock? Say, great, we'll take care of it in the morning. Let them get that automated message. That's, I mean, it's going to make people think about what is, I hope. I have heard that it does, but in my opinion, like, I would hope that I get that text that says, hey, the office is closed. I'm going to say, as a responsible person, like, this isn't an emergency. I don't need a blender at 10 p.m. So it kind of helps people reprioritize why they need to call you. And then you know that if those calls are coming in, they're probably for a big deal. Sorry. Those are some of the big things. We're seeing great response with messaging, not only from the managers who are using it, but also the guests. I mean, really great responses. I haven't done the numbers, but last year at an event, I gave some percentages of responses. And I think that across our stays messages, so that's pre-stay, post-stay, pre and post departure, it was like in the high 20% responses. So these people are getting them, they're responding, they know how to reach you if they need to in a manner that's not requiring somebody on your team to pick up that phone. And I think the other thing that I want to say about messaging is, because you can talk to them at the front of their stay, while they're in-house, and at the end of their stay, it gives a really good way to help them, remind them of what their checkout needs are. It helps you make sure that they have a great checkout experience. And if we circle back early on to the beginning of the conversation, thinking more, one of the takeaways from our Elevate conference of thinking more about that checkout experience for your guests, this is one way to be able to do that. So we talked about your guests, your internal teams, how you schedule work, how you know what's going on, how you have more visibility. We talked a little bit about your guests and communicating with them. And I want to end it on your homeowners. And so I think I have heard this repeatedly, that homeowners only know about 20% of the work that you're doing for their properties. And usually they know what you do for their properties because it's on the owner's statement. How great would it be if you could send them some of the reports about all of the things that you're doing that you're not charging them for? And I know there's been a lot of talk about, putting $0 items on owner statements so that they can see all of the value. But do you think that they know that every time you go to their home, you're taking 7, 10, 12 pictures? Do you think it would be helpful to say, hey, we went to your house and here's what we saw? Like, look, it looks awesome. That resonates with your homeowners. It makes them remember how much you care and why they chose to work with you. And it gives them a really good sense of solace that you're taking great care of their home. So every task that you do within Breezeway system, you assign it out, it gets done on that mobile app, And then it creates a report that can be shared with the homeowner. And that homeowner can see what you want them to see on that report, so that you have the ability to really continue to drive the value of why they made the decision to stay with you. And, I think it also gives you a really good background if you do need them to make a replacement or and pay something for an item to be replaced. Hey, here's all of the things that we've done. Did you know? You probably didn't know we've done all of these things, but we have tried to make this insert item work for you. So hopefully that's a good overview about Breezeway. I've got just under 3 minutes, and that's great because the last thing that I wanted to talk about was a little bit about how we help VRM clients. And not all of that will be very clear. Not all of these statistics on the left are coming from VRM clients. These are from our Breezeway clients. But we've got a great quote from a VRM client here as well. And I want to talk a little bit about our integration. So we have a two-way integration with VRM. So what that means is that when you enable the connection, we are going to receive your property information. So bedroom, bathroom, address, name, photos, all of those reference photos that you might want to use on how your property should look. All of that information comes over to Breezeway automatically. So your properties are built. And then we also have access to reservations. So as you're taking reservations in VRM system, those are going to push over to Breezeway. And then you're going to be able to schedule the appropriate work that needs to be done utilizing some of the tools that we just talked about within Breezeway system. But we know that many of you are doing your owner statements, you're doing your accounting out of VRM system. And so you need to get that information back into VRM. And that's why I'm excited to, as I said earlier, to talk a little bit about the two-way integration. So within Breezeway system, you're going to be able to then at the end of the week, month, whatever time frame it needs to be, say, okay, these are all of the tasks that we need to get back into VRM. You can select them, hit a button, hit one more button. So you say you want to export them to VRM and then confirm. And all of those maintenance issues can go back into VRM system. So you don't have to do that. You don't have to do any manual and a double entry between the systems. So that's super exciting. And we're really excited to be able to have that partnership with the VRM team. This is a little bit more information about us. I've talked a lot about what Breezeway is and what we do. But if you want a little bit more information, here that info is. And I just want to thank you all for taking the time to jump on this call today. I did it. We kept it in the right amount of time, and happy to answer any questions. My contact information is here if anybody wants to reach out to me. But yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I don't see any Q&A down in the chat right this second. So I did just want to, just after listening and kind of processing some of the things that Koryn shared with us today, I think we can all agree that over the last, I don't know, 5-10 years, I haven't been in the industry quite as long as Koryn has, but one thing that's not going down is that guest expectation. And I'm sure that all the property managers out there can agree, anything that they can do to help mitigate the workload that is on them, that is because of that guest expectation. I hate to say it, but our guests are getting more and more spoiled and a little bit bougie. Like they just really, they expect, top quality for the least amount of money, like there's just an expectation that's driven in our culture, and especially in North America today. So, and of course, I know you guys want to offer the best property at the best price, right? And you want to offer the best team of people around that. So I'm really excited for what Breezeway can bring to the table for you, for yourself and for your employees. And then that all gets transitioned over to the guest experience. So if you guys have questions for anyone over at Breezeway, whether it's Koryn or she sets you up with a dedicated account rep or how they do it over there, I know they'd be very excited to answer any additional questions or just get you on the line schedule a tour for the back end of the system and to show you around and just walk you through, handhold you through the process and take it from there. So
yeah, and I think, Tracy, the one thing I would add to that, right, is they are getting bougie, and we also have a lot of first time vacation rental guests, right? People who maybe didn't know about it, or maybe were a little bit more hotel centric. And they have that heightened sense of expectation, right? One of honestly, my personal biggest takeaways was from our conference that someone shared was like, you have room service, you have a valet or a concierge that can get you a car, like you have all of those things. We all have them every day from our phone, right? Like I don't need to call room service. I can call DoorDash or Uber Eats or Postmates or whatever. And if we can help facilitate and remind people of that, I mean, we are as an industry in a fantastic position, and I'm just really excited to see where the industry continues to go.
Absolutely. I'm excited as well. I'm very excited for our clients here at VRM, the successes they've had this year and the even more success in 2021. And I hope that you all will make Breezeway a part of that. So we won't keep you guys any further. We know you have tasks to get back to today. We appreciate you spending this time with us. Don't forget to join us next month, second Thursday of the month, right here, same time, and we will see you then. Thanks, Koryn. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.